Hi everyone, FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos here, and we're not going to have any Berlin Endgame today, sorry. Instead, since I played a tournament last weekend, I thought I'd show one of my games from that event, and maybe give a little bit of a recap too. And I think as a bonus, I'll show a Blitz game with an interesting finish that I played, I don't know, a couple of months ago now. So yeah, we had our Indiana Class Championships this last weekend, and there was a Blitz tournament on Friday night, and then the real tournament on Saturday. And in fact, the Blitz tournament was the most traumatic experience of the whole thing, really. So it was divided up into two parts. First, well, there were 18 players, and so we were broken up into three groups of six. And as it turned out, although it wasn't stated in advance. I mean, they said, well, we'll have some qualifiers, but it wasn't clear how many people would qualify. So anyway, round one, I'm playing, I guess, when it was around 1700 or something. I have white, you know, I'm concentrating, I'm playing for real, I'm not goofing off, and the guy just crushes me. I'm like I said, I'm white, I'm playing down, and, you know, not joking around. I mean, maybe not playing, certainly not playing my best, but not playing terribly, and not taking the guy seriously, and I just get flattened. I mean, the guy played a really good game. And this guy just keeps winning, too, in the preliminary section. So I was kind of shaken by this first round game. I mean, you know, I bore down and, you know, I beat the other guys I'm supposed to beat. And, okay, so what happens then is, all right, so I beat the other four guys. I'm 4-1. He's playing his last game. And he beat like another expert and some other players along the way, too. And at some point in this last game, he offers a draw to his opponent. And I didn't realize that the other guy was 3-1. I had beaten him pretty easily and didn't realize he was a pretty decent player. Anyway, so he offers a guy a draw, the guy declines, and ends up beating him. And I thought, all right, well, okay, you know, he just, you know, he got a little sloppy or something there, but didn't matter. Well, it turns out it did matter because that guy also got 4-1. And the decision was that there was going to be two qualifying places from each of these preliminary sections. So that meant I had to play this guy again who had poleaxed me in the first round. And so, okay, I'm really bearing down this time. And I won, but I had a couple of scary moments in that game, too. So I'm thinking, man, this guy is really quite strong. He's underrated. You know, this guy's got something really good going on here. And but then he played the other guy, and he lost that one, too. So he ended up not qualifying. And strangely, I mean, the next day in the real tournament, he was playing in the class section. He won his first game, and then he lost the next two. I'm not sure I did in the last round, but it was amazing. I mean, the guy is definitely stronger than what he ended up doing. So this guy has some really radical switches in form. Anyway, when we got to the final, it was a double round robin among the six of us, and there everything went smoothly. I won with 9.5 out of 10. 4 points ahead of the next guy, so everything worked out all right there. But what a scary moment at the beginning. All right, so anyway, the next day we have our class championships. So round one, I beat. It's supposed to be master and expert, but there weren't enough A players, so they combined us for pairing purposes. So I beat a 1988, I think, was the first round opponent. Round two played the guy who drew with me. Scored one draw and a loss against me in the finals in the Blitz. It's a tough guy to beat. You know, a strong Indiana player. We've played now, counting the Blitz, 6 times. I have 3 wins and 3 draws. The guy is unbelievably solid. In fact, in this tournament, in the regular tournament, okay, after he drew with me, he also drew his next 2 games. And I joked with the guy who drew with him in round 3 that, you know, not everybody can draw with him, which was both meant as a compliment, but as a little bit of a joke because, I mean, he can draw up, but he also draws down too. Anyway, round 3 had a crazy game that I won with black against a guy who was in clear first at that point. So the only 2-0. There's only one player with 2 points out of 2 after the second round of 4, and so I was able to defeat him with black. And going to the last round, I was leading by half a point over, I think, 6 people. No, just let me think. 6, maybe even 7 people. It was a lot of people, a lot of players. And oddly, in the last round, all the games but mine in that section, or at least all the games with people in contention, ended up as a draw. So finally we have this game, and this is my last round game. It's against a low to mid expert, so he's, I think, 2056 at this point, although he's 2094 on the wall chart. And that's usually where he bounces around, so upper 2000s. This is the guy who knocked out the 1700 who beat me up in the first round. So my way of thanking him was to knock him out of the money. Okay. Yeah, so he played. I was white, but okay. I choose to avoid the center counter, some of the main lines sometimes, just for a little variety, just to get these guys out of their stock patterns. Though I could note that, all right, in addition to d4 being a good move, probably black's best move, black could also play d takes e4, knight e4, queen d5, and arguably white has nothing better than knight to c3. So if you play the center counter, you might want to know that little trick. Although again, probably d4 is objectively best. I don't mind this either, but it's probably the way to go. But all right, don't count on my playing knight to c3 against people forever, but as I said, occasionally I like to play it as a little surprise weapon, and again, just to drive the center counter guys out of their stock patterns. Anyway, knight c3, c6, and I played it straight here with d4. Occasionally in blitz I'll play knight to f3, and once upon a time earlier in this video series, I showed a game I drew with no less a player than Alexei Dreyev using this. And my idea is not to go for the old boring variation with queen takes f3, but Tal's line with g takes f3. So I drew with Dreyev playing this with white. It's an old idea of Mikhail Tal's. He used it against Botvinnik in their 1960 World Championship match. And actually, Dreyev was a bit lucky. He was I probably should have beaten him in that game. Okay, well, I'm not going to show that game again, of course. You can find it somewhere deep in the archives. But I will show you a blitz game I played in this system, like I said, a month or two ago. So went e6, d4, bishop to b4, bishop to f4, and now knight f6. And here I was thinking, okay, what do I do? I definitely do not want to play e5. That would be a really horrible move, as it takes all of the flexibility out of my pawn structure. So my center becomes fixed, it's brittle, my dark square bishop becomes worthless. But, okay, what else can I do? If I play bishop to d3, then my d-pawn hangs after he plays d takes e4. If I play queen to d3, maybe I can do that, but that might be an okay move. But I decided that I wanted to play sharply and to put my bishops to good use. So I played a3. All right. He took, I took, he took, I took, he took, and I played queen f3. So now I'm relatively happy. I've got two bishops. It's a fairly open board. I've got the g file, I've got the b file, one or the other of which is bound to come in useful in case he castles. So whichever side he castles, I'll bother him on the appropriate file. All right, well, here he played knight f6. And I played rook to g1. And he decided not to castle. He could. I mean, bishop to h6. He can play knight to e8. I mean, he can hold on, but clearly, I mean, I've got an initiative over there. And he decided, therefore, to just give me the g-pawn and then go for some counterplay and try to castle queenside here. So he plays queen a5, and I play rook to b1. He castles queenside, and now I play rook takes f7. So now I'm up a pawn, but after rook h to e8, he might have felt reasonably ambitious or reasonably hopeful about the position. E5 is definitely a very good move for him if he can achieve it. Opening up the e file, taking my bishop on f4 out of the game, at least for the moment. Maybe knight to d5 at some point too, hitting the bishop, hitting the c pawn. So he's got something going for him here. But white is doing well. So you might want to stop the recording at this point and see if you can figure out what white to move should do. Well, it's very nice, and I'm glad that I got to see it. It would be one thing if I was checking the game later and turned on the engine or something and it found it. I'm not sure if I would be happy or if I would be despondent at missing such a chance. But the nice thing is that I saw it in the game, and won. So queen takes c6 check. Of course, this looks obvious, but you got to find all the right follow-ups. Rook to b8 right away doesn't work because knight takes, rook c7, and the queen takes. And of course, bishop to a6, queen a6. I mean, it's not an immediate mate, but I play bishop to a6 now. He takes. Now oops, that's humus for you. Rook to b8 check. He's got to take that. And then rook to c7 mate. So that's how the game ended. Terrific way to win a blitz game, especially. And my opponent was really gracious. It was an ICC game, and he said, he didn't mind losing such a game, to this nice tactic. So that was nice. Anyway, the game clearly made my day, and hope you enjoyed it too. All right, but now back to my game from the tournament. So I played d4, takes, and we go into this classical Caro-Kann. All right, he played e6, which confused me a little bit, but I decided, all right, I'm just going to play it normally with h5. The way that white can try to exploit this, and I'm not sure if it's a success, but it's a try, is to play knight e5, which I realized, but I didn't think about f4, although I think I knew this once upon a time, that this was possible. Whether this is especially strong for white or not, I'm not sure, but at any rate, this would be the way to try to test black's slightly unusual move order with e6 as opposed to the usual moves, knight to d7, or more usual moves, knight to d7. And knight f6 is also a bit provocative, again inviting this knight to e5 bit. But I just decided to play it the classical way. So h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, takes, queen c7. Okay, this is again very old-fashioned, stopping white from playing bishop to f4. Nowadays, black doesn't seem to care very much on bishop to f4. Black will often flick in queen to a5 check, and kind of take it from there. All right, so I played bishop to d2, knight to d7, castles. Again, very old-fashioned stuff. The reason why I want to show this game is that it's a nice idea, it's a nice example of a one-idea game. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, and even against good players, usually it'll happen when you're playing someone weaker than you are, but even against a good player sometimes, if they're not familiar with the relevant concept or idea, if you know or have some, let's say, really standard kind of plan, you understand that in such and such a position you're supposed to do this or that, very often, if your opponent's not really familiar with it or doesn't fully grasp how to deal with that threat or that idea, that plan, you can simply execute it and the game will almost win itself. Kind of a textbook approach. And that's really what happens in this game. It goes for a long time. It's a 52-move game, so we've got 40 more moves before it's over. But it was all very natural. In fact, it was so natural and so simple from the standpoint of my being familiar with these ideas from the way the Caro-Kann used to be played in the old days, that I actually finished the game with more time than I started with. We were playing game 60 with 30-second increments, and I think I finished with something like 64 minutes, while my opponent was down to his last minute by the end. And it's not that I'm such an amazing player and fantastically strong or unbelievably quick. I mean, I'm a reasonably quick player, but this was really a matter of my being familiar with standard plans and some standard concepts, not only in the Caro-Kann middle game, but even in the end game. And he wasn't, so we had to keep trying to figure things out. Never equalized, and finally made mistakes that cost him the game. All right, so we'll continue. King to b1, kind of a stock prophylactic move. It's useful most of the time when you castle queenside in general. Okay, knight g to f6, knight e4. Okay, black could try c5 here. It's not what he played, but it's okay. And against this, you just trade and play c4, and there's no real worries about c takes d4, knight takes d4. For instance, if e5, you have queen f5 check, breaking the pin, or queen h3 for that matter. So white's fine here. So he just took, and all of this is still known to theory. Okay, king a8 was a bit of a surprise for me, but it doesn't really change anything too fundamental. It does mean that you want to throw out any tricks on the h2 b8 diagonal, but as far as the general central play, the pawn structure and so on, it doesn't really affect anything. So c4, c5, bishop f4, bishop to d6. And what I want to do is, okay, I'm happy to swap off the bishops, although I choose not to. I played knight to e5 instead, but you can also trade the bishops. But basically what white wants to do is put the knight on e5, set the pawns up on f3 and g4, so everybody's protected over there, and on light squares. Trade everything off on the d file, and use that extra space on the king side to keep black from really getting his majority going, while slowly but surely trying to use the queen side majority. So it's all very recipe, very cookbook, and yet it's surprisingly difficult to combat. Also, the pawn may go to f4 instead of f3. And then further, there can be some cases where white ends up playing d takes e5. In those cases, you definitely put the pawns on e5, f4, g4, and h5, and look for a 4-on-4 breakthrough, even in a pawn ending. All right, so at this point, I'll show a couple of lines. Well, the game, of course, and the alternative, which is to take on d6 immediately. So knight e5, rook h to f8, and here's a little tactical line which gives white an edge. D takes c5, queen c5, knight f7. Okay, so black can't trade rooks and take the knight because rook to d8 is mating. But queen f5 check, queen c2, takes, and the h-pawn drops off. So white's still a bit better here, thanks to the slightly weak e6 pawn. But black is okay too, and I'm not sure that I like this better than the game for white. So I played knight to e5. Okay, he traded, which is a novelty, in fact, so we're already on move 20, and only now is there a new move. I don't remember what was played in the other game. Queen e7 was played, and white won that game as well. So c takes d4 I think is more logical. Rook d4, bishop c5, and I just drop the rook back to d1. Okay, now he plays queen e7. Okay, I played a3, just taking some squares away, eliminating any back rank possibilities, or, well, not that there would be any such possibilities anyway, because I can play king c2, but it's just a nice kind of tidying up move. I'll get on with positive moves later on. Okay, he plays rook h to f8. I play g4. So the h5 pawn is safeguarded. The g pawn is happy. All right, he plays rook to d4. Well, I'm not going to let him double, so I take and play the second rook over to d1. Again, I'm perfectly happy to trade pieces here. The pawn structure favors me really on both sides of the board, as we'll see in the game. So on the queen side, I've got a clean majority. On the king side, his majority is more or less stopped. And if he pushes, let's say he plays f6 and e5 at some point, then there's going to be a nice carpet, a white carpet as opposed to a red carpet, for my king to go over to the king side and start gobbling things. Watch and see. So he trades, he plays rook to d8, and I continue with my very simple plan here, f3. Now, what I was hoping for, and this is something that goes back to an old game between Kasparov and Vukic from the, I think it was the Malta Olympiad in 1980. And it's basically this, that if you get into certain kinds of king and pawn endings, white just wins automatically. So the following is just to illustrate how that endgame arises. a6, king c2, rook d7, takes, queen d3, takes. Okay, let's say he plays b6 to bring his king back into play. And now white wins with this simple tactic. Takes, f4, g5, and the h-pawn promotes. So that's an example of the of what black has to worry about in these Caro-Kann endings. So even on the side where he's got a majority, he can end up losing to a pawn breakthrough. So worse on the queen side, worse on the king side. All right, well, unfortunately with respect to that idea, my opponent didn't allow anything like that, but played knight to e8, preparing to mobilize his pawns. And maybe I could consider something like f4, but while the queens are on, I'm not sure if I should be worried about that or not. So I'm afraid of loosening up this pawn chain. So I just played king to c2. I'm again encouraging the exchange of all the major pieces. Okay, he plays f6 and then e5. And again, it's not going to be easy for him to create a passer. And meanwhile, once the heavy pieces are gone, he has to worry about this breaking and entering here. So I trade and played queen at e3. Okay. Clearly, if he trades, that king march is going to happen. So he correctly avoided it. Okay, and now I don't want to let his knight get to either d4 or f4, so I remaneuver my bishop. Okay, and yeah, here I could play bishop to e3, but I decided to first play queen to e4. Right, okay, so now he makes a serious error. Now I'm going to play bishop to e3 next, king to b3, queen to d5, and just keep squeezing him. Push the a pawn, and it's an unpleasant position. I mean, I certainly can't say that I'm winning here, but I like my position, that's for sure. Oh, that's right, yeah. The reason why I didn't play bishop to e3 was because of b5, so I just wanted to take care of that first. And if he plays knight f4, I can still play bishop to e3 whenever I want. Anyway, here he makes a mistake. I'm not sure if he was just very unhappy here and wanted to simplify the position, but after queen c6, maybe he miscalculated something. It's quite simple, but still instructive. So I trade. And now, okay, I'm not going to allow knight to g5. That would be horrible. So bishop to e3, king b7, king to d3. Okay, he's got to play a6 so his king can run over to the king side. But I just keep going. King e4, king f5. And here I could have played king to g6. I didn't want to worry about knight to d4. And in part this was the with my rushing. So, you know, I had over an hour. I was kind of enjoying that. And wanted to play without having to calculate anything, or without having to calculate anything that could even be remotely tricky. So, of course, white is winning here very easily. But I didn't want to bother with it, so I just played a4. And again, it's all cookbook. So if his king is going to come over to the king side, I'm going to make a passed pawn on the queen side. So king e7. Okay, again, I could play king g6, but I play b5, and we trade everything off. All right, so now he played knight to d8. King f7 is, I think, a bit more challenging. So I was ready for this. I mean, it's not that I hadn't calculated anything. I mean, I had looked at this and was quite confident of winning several ways. Okay, so one way to win is just this. King e4, heading back over to the queen side now. So let's say king e7, b6, knight to d8, king d5, king d7. So he stops me from breaking and entering. But then I just play bishop to c1, and then I swing the bishop to a3 to f8, and so on. And the defense breaks down very quickly. Okay, another way to win is to play b6 straight away. Knight to d8, bishop c5, knight to b7, bishop to b4. Okay, so now his king can't move, because then I penetrate either on e6 or g6. Both are completely winning. So he's got to mark time with the knight. Knight to d8. All right, now the way to win is king e4, king e6, and then here, okay, not king to d3. I mean, this doesn't lose, certainly. It doesn't give up a draw, but it can if you play after king to d7, something like b7. I mean, this would be terrible. Because takes here, king e6, and now f5. And all the pawns go, or too many pawns go, and black can hold this position. So white does have to show some care. So instead of king to d3, play bishop to a3 first, bring the knight to b7, and now king to d3. Okay, so now if the king goes to d7 or to f8, to d7 or to d5, then bishop to f8 wins. See, the difference was back here. Okay, here, bishop f8 is met by knight to e6. But when the bishop's already on b7, he doesn't have that. So that's the point of this little tempo move, bishop to a3. Okay, knight b7, king d3. And here he can't move the king over, so he's got to play knight to d8. And now we turn the corner and win. Okay, let's say he goes here now. King a6, king f7 to stop f5, bishop f8 I mean. Now this. So if he comes back, we play bishop to c7. So king e8 instead. And now the king is so far away, his king is so far away from my pawns that he won't be able to swap things off in time. And white wins routinely. So no trade of my f-pawn, and so I'm going to win. And again, there's no way for him to trade off my f-pawn. It's an easy win for white. So the easiest win, going back here, after king f7, is just king e4, and the king gets to d5, and then we play this. But, all right, a little bit more resistance to be had with king f7. Instead, he played knight to d8, and now I played king to g6, king f8, and okay, what would have been funny, I suppose, not for me so much, but just to show that you always have to be careful. Let's say I played b6. Okay, he plays king g8, for instance. All right. Let me do it this way. Okay, knight to c6 instead. Okay, b7, king to g8, bishop to a7, knight e7, mate. Okay, this would be a real horrifying, just a complete disaster. And similarly, I mean, there could be positions when my king was back on f5 where he plays king f5, or king f7, knight to b7, and knight to d6, mate. So you always got to watch out for these nasty little tricky things. So it's almost never too late to blow a game. But after my next move, there's no blowing it. So I play bishop takes h6. And again, we see the weakness of the black king side is fatal. So he took, I took. And here, okay, he played knight f7. Yeah, he thought for like 6 minutes here, went to about a minute or so, and played this. And I was ready for that. But I saw what he had in mind, and it's refuted nicely. King e8 is probably more resistant, but it's not that much more. Okay, you can just play g5, h6, and now, for instance, b6. And really that's all you need to do to win the game. Okay, white could also play king to g7, but this is a bit closer, in one line anyway. Knight e6, takes, knight to d4, okay, b6. And you have a line like this. And, okay. The fun idea here is that black looks like he's caught up in the race, but in fact he loses. So two different ways. White can either play b8 queen and then queen the second one with check, and then bring and then stop the pawn, or white could just play h8 queen and give a quick mate with the two queens if black allows white to make the second queen. So anyway, king e8 is a possibility. Going back. Yeah, but again, g5, I think I would have just done this. So in the game he plays knight f7. And all right, b6, knight to d6. And of course, the first thing is don't play king takes e5 because of knight to c4 check. That would be bad. Maybe white's still winning anyway with king f6, knight b6, king g6, and grabbing that h-pawn, but that would be insane for white to even bother going down such a route. So, king e6, no fork. All right, but now black gets to make his big idea here with e4. So, first of all, if f takes e4, knight takes e4, b7, there's knight c5 check again. I could just play king to d5, I think. That should probably do the job. But, as I said, I was ready for this and had a nice, simple refutation ready. King d6. So again, as in the variation we looked at a moment ago, I queen with check, and here he resigned. So it's a nice game, I think. A pretty clean game. It's a very straightforward game from a strategic point of view. And again, the nice thing is once you've seen a game like this, maybe seen a couple more, you know how it works, and it's very, very natural. In fact, I've had a couple of blitz games since then that have gone very much like this. So the same kind of idea. You get your grip on e5, you swap, the heavy pieces come off the board, and you enjoy your pawn majorities, your pawn majority on the queen side, and your superior structure on the king side. So it's a very effective plan. Also, okay, earlier I mentioned that sometimes black will take on e5 and white will be able to recapture with a pawn, and you get this so-called court grip, as Hans Kamak called it, with the pawns on e5, f4, g4, and h5. A very good game to look at for that was Kramnik-Bareyev. I think it was in that structure. It was certainly a very thematic Caro-Kann game, won by Kramnik with white. I think played in around 2004 or 2005 during his e4 phase. So take a look at that game as well. It's very instructive, as well as looking at perhaps that Kasparov-Vukic game that I mentioned from Malta in 1980. So I think you put these games together and you'll have a nice balanced understanding of at least one common way for white to take advantage of his chances in the classical King's Indian. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed also that blitz game from earlier. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye-bye.